should have been circulated to all members of committee. And we'll have that on the floor after the staff presentation, and then we'll hear from the speakers that have signed up. So with that, I'll pass it over to staff to just give us a brief update on SLWC.
Good morning. So my name is Marilyn Cherneau, and I'm the Director of Water, Linear and Customer Services. And with me today is Brian Simpson, who is the Manager of Water, Utility and Customer Services. So Brian will be doing the presentation this morning for you.
Thank you, Marilyn, and good morning, everyone. My name is Brian Simpson, and I'm the Manager of Water, Utility, Customer Services. Our team of highly qualified staff plans, manages, and delivers programs and services that directly affect businesses and residents, including the underground located of water and sewer infrastructure, leak detection, backflow prevention, water quality, linear rehab and grants, sewer use compliance, and our first response team that provides emergency customer support. Today's presentation will walk through a did you know about water and sewer lines, the history and timeline of the city's collaboration with service line warranties, and what we have heard about the program. Next slide, please. Before speaking about the service line warranties program itself, I wanted to quickly share a brief overview of the underground service lines. Water and sewer service lines connect a homeowner's property to the city's water and wastewater systems. The city maintains the sanitary and storm sewer service lines from the main to the property line, and the water service from the water main to the water shutoff valve, generally located at or around the property line, all shown in black in the diagram on the screen. Property owners are responsible for the sewer lines between the property line and the home, and the water service between the water shutoff and the home, also shown in green in the diagram. Many homeowners are not aware of this responsibility, and educating homeowners is one of the benefits of the work done by the project team and service line warranties. Next slide, please. We also wanted to cover the history and timelines of what led us to searching for a service provider and the collaboration that followed with Service Line Warranties of Canada. Following some significant rainfall and flooding events, a report to the May 2011 Environment Committee and Council included a recommendation to continue to provide information to residents on ways to reduce their risk of flooding, while also encouraging residents to participate in the city's residential protective plumbing program. One such item, which was passed by Council in 2016, included a recommendation to delegate authority to the General Manager of Environmental Services to implement a service warranty program as part of the city's broader and complementary efforts to address water and sewer service risks on private property. The review supporting the recommendation identified a warranty program that was being used in partnership with other Ontario municipalities. The Association of Municipalities of Ontario had previously created a not-for-profit organization called the Local Authority Services, who was mandated to work with Ontario municipalities as well as organizations from the broader public sector to help realize lower costs, higher revenues, and enhance staff capacity through cooperative procurement efforts. Local Authority Services conducted due diligence and selected service line warranties to provide low-cost warranty offerings to the residents of participating Ontario municipalities, which was something not offered through other means at that time. In 2020, the city entered into an agreement with Service Line Warranties to make their repair plans an available option to the residents of Ottawa. This initial program was launched in 2021. Earlier this year, we relaunched the program, which included a technical briefing, a 10-day review period for members of council to review and comment on marketing material, a public service announcement, social media awareness posts, digital screens and billboards, and a what's new announcement on the city's homepage. Next slide, please. When it comes to what we are hearing from residents, it is similar to what is being seen elsewhere. The use of the city's logo on the envelope and letter have been seen as misleading. The information contained in the letter is lengthy and has not been successful in addressing the concerns and complaints being raised. and the endorsement by the city has been seen as somewhat confusing. But we also know that residents are becoming more informed about both their own and the city's responsibilities to service lines. We know that residents are taking advantage of the warranty program to avoid unplanned and costly repairs. There are now more than 10,800 policies being held in the city of Ottawa by more than 5,100 residents and property owners. And to date, there have been 449 repairs in Ottawa since 2020, which has saved residents upwards of $580,000. Residents are experiencing high levels of satisfaction through quick and easy access to local contractors. Here in Ottawa, the reported satisfaction of those customers is more than 97%. For the 2023 relaunch, we had applied some lessons learned, which I'd mentioned earlier, but we do recognize that still more is required to address the concerns and questions that are being raised by residents. Next slide, please. Thank you for allowing us to come and present this morning. I will now hand it back to the chair for any questions from councillors. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I know I appreciate staff work on educating residents with regard to the Residential Protective Plumbing Program, which is an important program. And I think the piece we're discussing today is SLWC as an extension of that program. So I'm going to turn to Councillor Luloff first to introduce the motion that we have. If we can just get that motion up on the screen. And then after that, I'll go to delegations first. There are 4 delegations, Councillor. So I see a couple of your hands up, but there are 4 delegations first. And then we'll get into questions of delegations and questions of staff. So if we can get that the motion on the screen, please. And then I'll have Councillor Luloff read it in.
I can start now, Chair. I have it in front of me.
Okay, thanks so much, Councillor.
Yeah, no problem. So whereas city staff prepared a residential protective plumbing program report, which was approved by Environment Committee on February 16th, 2016 and Council on February 24th, 2016. And whereas the report delegated the authority to city staff to implement the Service Line Warranty of Canada program in Ottawa and authorize the use of the city's logo on SLWC's information materials associated with the program. And whereas when the program launched in Q1 of 2021, many residents wrote to members of council and or expressed concerns on social media regarding the appearance and wording of the SLWC program communication materials, the use of the city's logo, and uncertainty regarding the city's role in offering such a program. And where it has not been clear in the communication that the program is opt-in and voluntary, and that SLWC is an independent company separate from the city or the utility service provider. And whereas the process by which the AMO Local Authority Services selected SLWC as a preferred proponent is not transparent, and the city has not publicly disclosed that it receives payment when taxpayers buy insurance from SLWC, whereas the service that SLWC offers is not unique and is available through other property insurance policies at a competitive rate. And anecdotally, I've heard from my residents that they're able to get it through their current service provider for a much lower rate. Whereas the contract that the city signed with SLWC continues to September 3rd, 2027, and specifies that SLWC may continue to send out an unspecified number of mailouts with the City of Ottawa logo. And whereas the terms of the contract with SLWC specify that the city can end the relationship within 30 days notice with no penalty. Therefore, be it resolved that the city immediately discontinue their affiliation with SLWC within 30 days notice. Be it further resolved that the city undertake a public information campaign with education about insurance options for private portion of the water sewer services, which are the residents' sole responsibility. And be it further resolved that these communications differentiate between insurance options that will cover damage from sewer backups because of more frequent rain events and those that result from failure of the lines themselves, such as the SLWC program. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Luloff. I think we've got a separate version here that was circulated this morning by Clerk's office. And so I'll just make sure that we've got the therefore be it resolves on the screen as well. Appreciate you reading that portion in. Doesn't change too much, but I want to make sure we got the therefore be it resolves accurately on the screen here. So it's therefore be it resolved that the Environment and Climate Change Committee recommend council direct staff to engage with SLWC before Q2 2024 to negotiate an amendment to the agreement to prohibit any further direct mail to residents during the term of the agreement. And if the negotiation is not successful, to terminate the agreement for convenience pursuant to the terms of the agreement. And be it further resolved that the agreement not be further renewed past the expiry in 2027, should the agreement be successfully amended as directed herein. And be it further resolved that the city undertake a public information campaign to educate residents about the options available to protect the private portion of water and sewer services, which are the residents' sole responsibility. And be it further resolved that these communications differentiate between options that may address damage to property from sewer backups related to new significant rain events, which are not covered by SLWC, and failure of private service lines as a result of wear and tear. I do want to make sure from the clerk's office, because very clearly we asked for this to be sent out this morning. Is that been sent to all committee members as of this morning?
We were in the process. Chris will have to let me know if that's been completed. We will be sending an email now. I believe it's already been added to the shared drive.
Okay, thanks very much for that. I just want to make sure all members have that in front of them and that we've got the delegations coming up. So we'll allow that to be sent out, and then now we'll move to our registered speakers. So our first registered speaker on this item is Dawn Asquin, and I believe they also have a PowerPoint associated with this. So if we can get the first registered speaker up, Dawn.
Good morning. My name's Don Asquin. I'm an electrical engineer. Have a background during that career of doing lots of contract negotiations, as well as responding to requests for proposals, that sort of thing. So I come here today to talk off about SLWC, and I have some questions and concerns. Next slide. All right, so a summary of what I want to talk about is right now, homeowners that I've talked to, they all incorrectly assume that this is about flooding of their basements. And I'll go into the details of why that, but I've asked many people, they're all confused. In fact, it's covering tree roots, it's covering aging infrastructure. Questions I have is why the city hasn't divulged its agreement of the details. My understanding is that they actually receive a payment for every policy that's chosen. That's nowhere divulged as far as I can see. I also have an overarching question of why the city is endorsing specific private companies. To me, that's very bad for a public look. Also, it appears to have not done, to me, due diligence in selecting SLC. I'll get into that. There's other companies who would do this, and as was said in the motion, at significantly lower costs. And I have some details of that. Next slide. All right, so the coverage is unclear, and it's this diagram, I have to say, and as was said in the verbiage, and the city said as well, there's a huge amount of text. People aren't able to read through that. It's very complicated. They don't think of sewers. They're underground. But they do know that within the media and within Ottawa, there's been multiple floods due to climate change. Every person I talked to in my community thought this was about protecting flooding of their basement. It's not clear. That's not what it's about. And when I further talk to them, they're very surprised. Many are very surprised to see the Ottawa logo was raised. And then when I talk more about the relationship that I've learned, they're really quite shocked. Next slide. So the value of the city is, my understanding is that the city receives 5% coverage or payment for each policy that's sold. I can't find that anywhere in what is in the mail outs that were sent. All that said is it's entered in an agreement. And I have to say, the internet, which is not exactly the bastion of ethics, even someone who is someone who's trying to sell something will frequently say, by the way, I make 5% on every sale of this. The city doesn't even do that. And it just seems very surprising to me. Why are you not being transparent? Next slide. Why is this company being chosen? To me, the public sector should remain unbiased and provide information to homeowners. It should not be standing behind a particular one because it creates unfair competition. And as I said, it confuses ratepayers when they see the logo right beside SLWC. To me, and I'll go into details in the next slide, I don't think there was due diligence. Other insurance companies do currently have that. Even if they didn't at the time, a open bid policy would have allowed those insurance companies to respond to that. And I can talk more in questions about that. And then the competition would have had a better agreement for customers. I'm not making this up. Next slide, please. I talked to my provider, Kevin Carruthers at Desjardins. This is a complicated slide. The take home is in red, and I'm sorry, I'll use my laser pointer. SLWC, $127, Desjardins, $35 a year. It's 28% that you could go to a private industry and do this. And Kevin is receiving numerous calls from his clients because they're all confused as well. This isn't just me finding the confusion within ratepayers. It's widespread. There's reference here. You can look at this later of how much it costs to repair. This is from SLC's actual letter. You can see it's significantly less than what it is about. Look at that later. It's a lot of detail. Next slide. Other companies. So I did a 20-minute search online. Allstate, where they're blue is because they're hyperlinks. You can have a look at these. Allstate has a repair and replacement of external damage to water pipes, $10,000. They also include things like sewer backup, which is much more important. Let's be honest. Intact also has the identical coverage, as you'll see, $10,000. What SLWC has is not unique at all. Next slide. So my conclusions. I don't believe that they should be endorsing individual companies. It's poor competition, and it certainly confuses ratepayers. The SLC insurance doesn't address what's really important to homeowners, and that is climate change related flooding that's been in the media so much. I don't believe that good due diligence was conducted because other insurance companies currently have this and would have possibly developed it. Disturbingly, they're not disclosing that they receive a payment, and the offer that's being sent out to ratepayers is 3.5 times what they could get from probably their local insurance company in my experience. Next slide. So rather than just complaining, here's some recommendations. Rather than
just ask you to wrap up as quickly as possible.
I am. This is my last slide.
Okay.
Thank you. My last slide, go to University of Waterloo, the Intact Center for Climate Change Adaptation. You'll see it's Intact. It's that insurance company is sponsoring this, but it's fully disclosed. In particular, Cheryl Evans has come up with great stuff, flood tips, what to ask your insurance company, emergency preparedness. Again, those are blue hyperlinks that you can go to. Last slide is thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thanks for getting.
I know I was over 5 minutes. I'm sorry.
You were succinct and there was a lot of information in the
All right.
presentation, so appreciate that. There will be questions for you. Perfect. So I'm just going to go to Councillor Devine and then Councillor Tierney, who also has a question.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me okay?
We can. Go ahead.
To the delegate, so thank you very much for your presentation. I very much appreciate all the work that you put into this. And just so you know, I am very sympathetic to all of the concerns you raised. I share a lot of those concerns. I just wanted to ask a question in relation to what you mentioned about how many residents are understandably confused about whether or not SLWC's coverage extends to the kind of flooding issues and other climate change related damages that many people are experiencing. My question, because I just want to be sure about where the confusion comes from, are you saying, or are people communicating to you that they are under the impression that SLC itself is communicating that their coverage extends to this kind of climate-related flooding? Is the confusion coming from SLWC or just the community's general confusion, which is understandable?
That's a great question. I'll give you some specific examples if that's all right. So, as we all know, climate change very much in the news. Homeowners in Ottawa have had their basements flooded. So that's something that's very important and pressing on their minds. They see the letter from SLC. There's a vast amount of text on there. Honestly, they glaze over, they don't see that, but they do see the diagram. Nobody normally thinks about their pipes in their house, but they sure see their basement in that diagram, and they sure see, geez, that's a problem. They incorrectly, because it never says, to be clear, the SLWC never says this is covering your house, but they make the assumption because they see that, because it's front of mind, oh, this must be covering flooding insurance because it's been in the media. There have been events. They don't bother to read the pages and pages of fine print that are very clear that it's for tree roots. Well, actually, it doesn't mention tree roots. It just says aging infrastructure, that sort of thing. So there's no, at no time does SLWC say it's covering climate change. It's a conclusion that the public is reading because it's so complicated. I'd like to give you one example of my neighbor who was came to me and asked me about this and actually thought that the City of Ottawa logo must have been a cut and paste. There's no way the City of Ottawa would have allowed this company to put it on. Scam has been used many times by my neighbors and friends on this. And so she was going to look at the logo and make sure that it really was the City of Ottawa and this wasn't a scam. When I told her what I had learned, shocked and appalled, a kickback going on because it is never divulged, as far as I can find, that the 5% kickback comes back. This lady is no idiot. She is a PhD lecturer or professor at the University of Ottawa and has won the Order of Canada. And she was totally confused and shocked by this.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor, I'll ask Councillor Lash, you have to be brief on your questions if possible. Councillor Tierney.
Great. Thank you, Chair. Thanks for coming out. And I remember when this first rolled out, it was a dumpster fire. It looked like somebody taped their logo on. It didn't even look professional at the time. But I did want to, and there are questions I will have for staff that you've raised in your presentation. The one thing I was wondering during your research with insurance companies, what we've noticed over the last couple of years here in the Beacon Hill area, because we have a lot of Lita clay and the aging of the laterals, they've been collapsing. And I'm not sure if you know what a lateral collapse is, but they basically have to dig out the whole front of your home, put a whole new pipe in, and it's typically about $20,000 to $25,000. And I've seen some people take advantage of that. I noticed in your slide decks, it said $10,000 cap. Do you know by speaking with insurance? Because if we support this motion today, I think we have to at least inform our residents. The risk is on you warning. If anything good comes of this program, even if we decide to cut it out, is to really inform people about the true cost of how expensive it is. And it's just aging community time, laterals are failing. Do you know if they increase, like it's a 10,000 for one and what was it, SWLC 20? Is there an ability with private company to increase that amount?
With that to me. So clearly I'm not an expert in the destruction or of collapse of sewer lines. What I will say is an open bid process would have allowed the insurance companies to have responded. They're experts in this sort of thing. They would know. I'm just a ratepayer who has seen these problems. So what I'm very confused about, there doesn't seem to be an open process in which the people who are experts in insurance could have responded and therefore would have come forward. Now, you may be able to make the argument, well, at the time, SLWC was unique in what they offered. But that is the point of an open bid process. And I'll give you an example from my personal experience in work. So what I did mainly in my career was develop scientific instruments that are on spacecraft on orbit. So I've worked with NASA, the ESA, the European Space Agency, Canadian Space Agency. So Canada Space Agency would say, we'd like to find out about a specific scientific goal. And they would ask then all the players within Canada if they could build an instrument that would be on orbit to find that out. Of course, we didn't have that or that thing sitting on our shelf, but we had expertise in that area. In the same way, the insurance companies don't have exactly that policy, but they are experts. They are actuarial scientists. They know how to come up with something. So what would happen in the open process, we would then, because we had expertise, we'd develop a program, we'd ask questions, we'd find out what was going on, and we would create a proposal back to the CSA or the organization to have a policy. That appears not to have happened. So instead, the insurance companies responded after the fact when ratepayers started getting questions, and then ratepayers started asking the insurance companies, what's this about? My insurance agent, he got a letter too and was confused by this.
Okay.
He could have had the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Councillor Tierney. Any other questions for the delegation?
Right. Just to clarify what the actual question was,
I'm
you're
sorry.
unaware if private insurance is able to increase the amount, correct?
So what I think is, and I'm sorry, so.
I don't need an example. It's a binary question.
Go ahead. So here's my understanding. It's at 10,000 from looking at their policies.
Okay, so no, you don't know. Okay,
I
thank you.
think Councilor Tierney, that's also a good question for staff as well.
Exactly.
So appreciate that very much. Thank you very much for your delegation. We'll move on to the next delegation. Mike Van Horn, as General Manager of Service Line Warranties of Canada. I believe I have Mike online.
Yes, that's correct.
And we can hear you well, sir. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks for allowing me the time to speak today. As mentioned, my name is Mike Van Horn. I'm the Country General Manager for Service Line Warranties in Canada and reside in Vaughan, Ontario. I believe city staff would agree that since the launch of the original program in February of 2021, the SLW team in Canada has acted in good faith to deliver all of the commitments of our agreement, including the development and all costs related to any marketing, the enrollment of over 5,000 current residents, and over 11,000 current service plans, as well as the completion of 450 repairs, saving Ottawa homeowners over $586,000 in out-of-pocket emergency repair expenses they would have otherwise had to pay. As mentioned by staff, our customer satisfaction scores remain exceptionally high, with a rating of 4.86 out of 5. And from the time a repair car is received in our 24/7 call center, we're averaging repair completion within 24 hours. We are not just reimbursing homeowners, we're working with contractors to have those repairs actually completed and then paying the contractors directly. After city staff received direction from councillors that additional internal communication was required before further marketing efforts were to proceed, we supported all staff efforts to provide enhanced background to the program, outline the responsibilities of both the city and ourselves. We revised the marketing creative based on extensive feedback from city staff. And as the staff mentioned, council was given an additional 10 days to review and provide additional feedback. The agreement with SLWC was renewed in the fall of 2022 for 5 years following the detailed technical briefing for council. And with full council support, we resumed marketing in July of this year. The response to the most recent marketing efforts have actually been very strong. To date, and over 2,000 new residents chose to enroll in this optional coverage to protect themselves against potentially expensive emergency repairs. We understand that new and innovative programs like this one will of course generate questions from residents that are frankly unaware of their responsibilities for these service lines on private property. Calls from homeowners are very common initially, and our experience with 70 municipalities confirms this initial volume drops dramatically after the initial awareness campaign. I trust you'd agree that SLWC has met, and I hope that you'd agree we've exceeded every possible expectation either you or your residents could reasonably have of us in delivering the terms of our agreement. We were surprised that there would be questions related to this program, but we're very happy to continue working with staff as requested to be able to revise the program and be able to address any concerns that may exist. Thanks again for your time. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much for your delegation. First up, I have Vice Chair Carr and then Councillor King. Vice Chair.
Yeah, thank you very much for your presentation. As a new councillor who wasn't involved in the sort of the first mail out of the SLWC, but attended the technical briefing, I did find initially that I received a lot of calls from residents about this program, which was a little bit, frustrating. However, I represent a ward that had over 200 flooding incidents on August 11th, including one street that 36 homes flooded for the second time in 6 years. So it was after that I began to really inform myself of the different programs that the city had to protect things. And I did a little bit more research on that service line program. And I will say that I think there's an opportunity to combine that knowledge of all of our programs together. So we have, clearer communication to residents about what programs are available to residents, that sort of thing. But what I wanted to ask you is the previous delegate gave a presentation about, the fact that Desjardins or other insurance providers provide similar coverage. And I know that I think you mentioned that you deal with 79, close to over 70 municipalities. And I note that you have contracts with many. Could you outline the differences between Sewer Line Warranties of Canada and any coverage that would be available from Desjardins, my home insurance provider? That would be appreciated. Thank you.
Sure, no problem. So the real difference is what we are offering is technically not insurance. It is a service plan, meaning that we are not reimbursing customer or homeowners directly. We are actually completing the repairs for them. For insurance, typically you would have a deductible, not all, but many have a deductible that you'd have to pay up front. We do not. And with that, you'd still have to find your own local contractor, somebody you can trust, make sure that you are getting a reasonable quote for the work. And then you'd have to have the repair completed and then have that reimbursed up to the maximum benefit from insurance. We take care of all of those things. We are a single phone call. Once that phone call is received, we deal directly with the contractor. We make sure that that contractor arrives, completes the work. We stand behind all of their work. And then we also stand behind our work beyond after it's been completed, should there be any issue or a small leak or something like that that would happen afterwards. None of those additional benefits would be provided by a typical insurance provider. And not all insurance providers do provide this kind of coverage. You can add it as a rider typically to basic home insurance, but only if your provider includes or offers this type of coverage, and not all do.
Okay, thank you. So are you aware of any other companies operating that provide this exact product in Ontario, let's say, or in the Ottawa area?
I am not.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation, delegation.
Thank you.
Councillor King.
Thank you, Chair. And I just have a few questions for Mr. Van Horn concerning the advertising for the service. Was city staff informed that Service Line Warranties would advertise its repair plans online?
Yes.
And was the use of online ads covered under the city's endorsement agreement?
It is, yes.
Okay. And do we know whether Service Line Warranties, can you tell us whether you leveraged other systems of advertising such as Facebook and Twitter versus online Google ads?
Yes, we have. We have had in the past with our original campaign, we have had video ads that were part of that.
Okay, so you also had native advertising then, you're saying basically video ads and explanatory ads that were targeted to residents. Could you tell us what were the parameters for the targeting of those ads?
They're a general buy against, excuse me, they're a general buy against postal codes, so that we're doing that within geographies where we have agreements in place with municipalities. There is no other specific targeting, so there isn't a way for us to target specifically homeowners as an example.
Okay, and so was the use of the logo and other materials approved by staff?
All creative
images and
all creative that we have used has been shared and approved by staff.
Okay, thank you for that. I am a bit disappointed that I learned about the online advertising component by logging on to CNN.com last month and seeing ads that we did not approve and that were not run by us, despite the fact that staff did acknowledge previously that there was minimal consultation on mailings. And we've been speaking about mailings, but this to me creates another level of complexity in terms of online ads and the language that was used, the illustrations that were used. And I must say, I'm disappointed with that. That doesn't lie primarily with the vendor. I will have some questions of staff, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Brockington.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, sir, for your presentation and for appearing before the committee this morning. I do want to verify you acknowledge that here in Ottawa, there has been a significant pushback by the public. There's been confusion by the public with mailed advertising they've received. The public has questioned the legitimacy of the program and offer that has come to their attention. And in particular, it's with the printed communications, notwithstanding other communications we've just heard from. But I just want to make sure you have an opportunity to acknowledge and or speak to what the public has brought to every city councillor around this table multiple times. Every time there's a wave of comms that comes out from your company, it's our office staff and ourselves that have to spend the next few weeks explaining to the residents what this program is, because they have no idea, because they don't think this is a legitimate partnership with the city. So I just want to yield to you and hear your thoughts on this matter.
Thank you. As mentioned in my comments, it's not uncommon for there to be questions when in the initial awareness building of this program. It's just naturally part of it. Excuse me, I believe the last delegate as well spoke to. People actually don't think about these things. They don't think about this infrastructure on their property. It's buried underground, it's out of sight and out of mind, and people don't think about it. It does require some amount of education for people to actually understand what their responsibilities are. And as staff said, that's an important part that we believe of the program and the value that we bring. It is certainly not our intention or desire for that to create a number of calls to be able to manage, but it has been our experience with 70 municipalities that drops off quite dramatically as we get deeper into the program and it matures.
And yet there's a motion before us to potentially terminate the program because of these types of issues. When people get their tax bill in the mail, no one contacts me about the legitimacy of the mailing that they've received. When they get their water bill, when they get a letter about the vacant unit tax, I've never received a question about the legitimacy of the correspondence that the homeowner has received. And yet when your mailings go out, we receive dozens and dozens of complaints because the actual letter that they've received looks phony. And now I have a colleague with a motion here that wants to terminate the program because we're tired of the impact that this has on our residents. So while I'll acknowledge that you very well offer a service that some people might want to subscribe to, right now it's down to a cost-benefit analysis of what we're going through. And so I think a better care needs to be taken about how future correspondence are undertaken, because we're telling you loud and clear what has happened to date has been unacceptable. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Luloff.
Thanks so much for coming out today. How many mailings has your company put out so far in the city of Ottawa?
We have put out 3, I believe.
And how many times have those mailings been edited based on the feedback that you've received from the city?
They have been edited twice.
Why do you think that there's still confusion with regard to your program? If there's, if you're continually looking at the feedback that you're receiving, we've done extensive work to try to explain the program when we receive complaints. Why do you think people are still confused about what you're offering?
I do believe it's because as I was saying, it is something that is both unique, as well as it is something that people are not used to thinking about and covering. Many people don't know they're responsible. They don't know that at all. And it doesn't matter whether we sent that out with the city or on our own, it would generate questions asking whether that's indeed true, because it's not common knowledge and people don't generally understand that.
So you don't believe at all that it has to do with the quality of the communication material that you're providing?
I believe there's always an opportunity to revise and to improve items. I agree with the previous delegate that spoke about the length of them. They are lengthy for 2 basic reasons. One, we want to be abundantly clear about exactly what's being covered. And because the preferred response to these are for people to actually complete the application form and mail them back in. That actually forms the basis of our agreement and obligation to them. It does become a legal document, which is why it is as long as it is.
Understood. However, people read even the revised notices and still have, questions about the legitimacy of the programming. Like, I'll be very frank with you, as I'm apt to do. Like, it looks like somebody drew these up in Microsoft Paint. You look, there are, I think I counted 7 different fonts used. Like, it looks like a letter that was sent out, from somebody who's like holding my dog hostage, like it's incredibly unprofessional. And of course, that's going to get people up in arms. I think that this program could have been rolled out in a manner whereby people got an introductory letter saying, hey, listen, did you know that you're responsible for this? Here's what we're offering. Here's the entire terms and conditions of the agreement between us and the City of Ottawa. You also have other options. So while you're looking at us, you may wish to speak with your insurance company and have a discussion about, what they offer. Here's what we offer. We'll send you out another letter in a couple of months. We hope that you consider us, or something like that. But what we've been receiving, and I mean, like, I just shake my head every single time I get a new one. I'm like, this does not reflect the comments that we've provided. It still looks unprofessional. And it just seems to me that a company that's dealing with that many municipalities might have been able to get it right at this point. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Councillor Luloff. All right, so thank you very much for your delegation. We are now moving to our next delegation, Angela Keller-Herzog with cafes. And I believe Angela is online. We see you there.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Okay, so I'm seeing the PowerPoint, which means I don't see the clock. Okay, let me get started here. So I'm Angela Keller-Herzog, the Executive Director of Cafes. Next slide, please. So we are a network of local environmental leaders. Next slide, please. Most of you know us. I'm just going to be speaking to the context of this motion and contract or partnership agreement with the city, and then a recommendation. Next slide, please. Where we are coming from is from the climate resiliency context, understanding that climate risks and the cost thereof are sharply increasing, both for residents and the city. This is a graph made by the city. It doesn't yet include 2023 costs, which, as we all know, were multidimensional. Next slide, please. So the context in which what is happening in our front yards, to do with sewage, to do with stormwater, to do with trees, is in flux. There's a lot of work being done. The infrastructure master plan, as you know, is in the works. There are sewer design guidelines under review, overland drainage system studies, stormwater management retrofit master plan is going to be prepared. There's a new wastewater master plan. There's a new storm water bylaw in the works that we haven't seen anything of. Next slide. So there's a lot of moving parts. Also, from the climate resiliency side, we know that the draft is expected next year, early, we hope. We expect that the draft strategy will be accompanied by early actions, these low-hanging fruit. And regarding the water hazards, the low-hanging fruits are basement backflow valves and equipment. Now, some of the backflow valves are located outside and some of them are located inside. Next slide, please. So it's very confusing in terms of, next slide, please. I think there was a duplicate. So it's very, very confusing. Everybody is having to learn. So I think that the residential protective plumbing program will need to be reviewed, and the kind of supports that residents will get to protect them from the impacts and the risks of climate will include some of this infrastructure and having a new look at it. So our recommendation is not to commit the city to one partnership with one supplier. There are too many moving parts. We should complete the infrastructure master plan and any new bylaws first. We should also be ready to collaborate with the insurance sector, and especially also the brokers, because in terms of the question that was asked previously at this committee, if you want to know whether you can get insurance for something, what you need to do is you need to contact a broker, and the broker will give you the answer. So our recommendation would be to get out of this partnership, clear the decks. It's created way too much confusion. And I see that I have 1 minute left in my delegation. I've switched screens now. I'd like to also address the confusion about the motion that is in front of us and how this feels like from a public delegation point. I think that the work of the committee is supposed to be the point where like public delegates can express the public interest. And it's happened quite a lot of times where from the public side, we don't know what motion is actually being discussed. Things are flashed very quickly on a screen. I noticed from a previous councillor comment that the councillor thought that what we're discussing is like getting rid of the agreement, whereas I think the motion that I saw flash is we should get rid of the mailouts and amend the agreement. So I think there needs to be a new system so that public delegates can actually have access to some link and see the motion that's actually on the floor. So our recommendation, regardless of the motion, is that the city should get out of this agreement and that this kickback scheme is highly questionable, that in no other situation we have in place. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much for your delegation. We have Vice Chair Carr up to ask a question.
Hi, thanks very much. Thanks for your presentation, Angela. I just wanted to say that I completely agree with you that we need to review the residential protective plumbing program. In my ward recently, we had, I think I mentioned at a previous delegation, 200 floods, and city staff have been working on those, figuring out what the issues were. I'll also mention that I probably should have, I put a notice of motion through at the last council meeting, and I in retrospect, maybe I should have put it through Environment Committee. It's just that it touched on those plumbing programs as well as 311 client service, the work that PIMR does in terms of communication, because absolutely as climate change has taken hold and we're expecting more flooding events in the future, I think that we need to do a better job overall of providing clear information on the different types of flooding events. We have a centralized location for flood resources, and whether or not we keep this program or not, I think it needs to form part of that comprehensive resources that people can inform themselves on. But I just wanted to mention specifically that I did ask for staff to report back on findings on improvements that can be made to preventative flood and water management programs, including that residential protective plumbing program and the compassionate grant program, and talked about better coordination. And I probably should have brought it through environment now in retrospect, and I didn't, just because it touched on so many different departments, but I realized I eliminated the chance to have delegations by doing that as well. So I just wanted to draw your attention to that, and I completely agree that we need to be looking at this holistically. So thanks for your presentation today, and I take your point about being clear to the public about what we're doing, and I realized that I was part of the problem in what I did. So just wanted to acknowledge that. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Vice Chair Carr and Ms. Keller-Herzog. I think what we'll do is when we're done the delegations, we'll put the motion back up on the screen during some questions to staff. I do agree it's hard sometimes for the public to see those, especially when we have committee business. Committee members can bring anything anytime they want. They can do it on the fly as it goes. But I think as a public delegate, it's definitely hard to see those things. So we'll put it back up there to make sure it's clear. I think it differentiates from what you had mentioned, but I appreciate your comment, and maybe it's something we'll work on with clerk's office more holistically in the future. And thanks very much, Vice Chair Carr, for those comments. So with that, we're moving on to the last delegate on this item, which is Carol McLeod. Carol, you are up. I think you've muted yourself. Try unmuting. Go ahead. Can you just say something? Oh. I think she, oh, there we go. Okay, can you just try speaking, Carol? No, you're still muted, unfortunately. I think on your end you've unmuted, but for some reason we still can't hear you. Not sure if there's a microphone issue on your end. Okay. Okay. It looks like we're having technical difficulties on your end. And so what we'll do is if we can sort it out in the next couple of minutes, we will. I think for now, we'll make sure we get the motion on the screen, just to therefore be it resolves if we can, to the clerk's office to get the therefore be it resolves on the screen. And Carol, maybe if you work it out on your end, we'll hear you at some point. And then I'm going to open up the floor to questions of staff by councillors at this time. So the motion is now on the screen, so the gallery and public and councillors can see it there. And I'm going to open up questions to staff now. So if anyone would like to ask questions, now is a good time. And I see Councillor King, who I know has had an inquiry previously on this program in. Councillor King, you're up first.
Thank you, Chair. So I just wanted to run down the questions that I had asked service line warranties. So I wanted to know, was staff informed that service line warranties would advertise its repair plans online?
Thank you. So we are aware that they do run advertisements online. Staff only review when the city's logo is going to be presented on any of those advertisements.
So then you would have reviewed this advertisement that appeared on I guess it was CNN.com. It's a Google online advertisement, and it basically makes a direct pitch for somebody to sign up with price included. And of course, it has the city's logo.
We have not, or I have not seen that ad myself. When you mentioned that earlier, I did make a note to try to go back and find that and confirm with my staff whether or not we've had an opportunity to review that ad prior to it being posted.
So were we provided statistics from service line warranties as to the conversion rates for these ads? I mean, they did indicate that 2,000 people signed up. Do we have any idea whether they signed up as a result of the mailouts, the physical mailouts that went to addresses, or based on the, I guess, the geo-targeted advertising online?
Mr. Chair, we don't have those conversion rates at the moment, but that's something I'd be happy to take away and return back to you when we can find that information. Thank you.
So generally, what type of information did we receive around online advertising? Because from my perspective, members of council weren't informed. And when we had the technical briefing, we were talking about advertising in the form of mailouts. I was only made aware that there was online advertising just by happenstance, by actually opening a browser, looking at the day's news and being surprised by this ad. So I'm just wondering, why wasn't this brought to the attention of members of council so that we could approve it? We were circulated materials for inclusion in newsletters, for communication to residents, and also to have a sense of what was being utilized in terms of advertising the program. So I'm just wondering why this wasn't brought to our attention.
Mr. Chair, we'll have to review the data and information. As I mentioned, it is staff's role to review all the advertisements, including the City of Ottawa logo, before going out. This is coming as news to me. I was unaware of this in particular online advertisement. So it is something we'll have to take away and review to see if in this case it was reviewed by staff, and if not, what the steps and the process were that were missed along that way. Thank you.
The only reason why I'm really making a point of this is because when we undertook the technical briefing, when we had the inquiry around ensuring that mailers would be reviewed, the reason was so that we could take a targeted, phased approach at one area at a time geographically, rather than distributing this citywide. Obviously, with this geolocation, I'm assuming this is more of a citywide approach. So that's one of the reasons why. It's one of the reasons why I'm asking this. The other question that I have is, was the city responsible for determining and evaluating the customer satisfaction ranking for the service? Because I think we had heard from Mr. Van Horn that the satisfaction was very high for the program.
So Service Line Warranties of Canada themselves review the feedback from residents. The city were allowed to ask, if we have concerns or questions, we want to see the information, but that's based off the 97% approval that they're receiving is based on surveys that they're doing of policyholders within Ottawa.
So we don't independently evaluate the satisfaction. So we engage with a vendor and we simply ask them, how's it going? Is there great satisfaction across the board? And we take those numbers verbatim from them.
Mr. Chair, we look at all the information, both what service line warranties is providing us and also what we're seeing empirically and anecdotally from residents and from councils themselves around the successes that we've seen. We do think there are opportunities to improve some of that oversight. But again, when we look at the relaunch and the success that it's had, particularly over the last few months, we were all really well taken back to see that a lot of people were signing up, a lot of people were taking advantage. And again, some of the statistics I'd mentioned earlier, the fact that, we've had almost 500 repairs since 2020 successfully completed. And I mean, some of those stories, we're not hearing a lot of those successes, but we know some of the residents are really capitalizing on this program that's afforded to them. But I do hear your point that, yes, we can likely be doing some more oversight to dig into some of the information with service line warranties, particularly around the responses that they're receiving from the residents of Ottawa.
Well, Chair, I'd love to see a direction around ensuring that there's some method of independent evaluation of the program that we are signed up for, as well as ensuring that all advertising materials come to members of council. I think that those are reasonable requests, especially in light of the type of complaints that I receive from residents. And I'll just enter this into the record as my last statement. This is what I received yesterday. Hello, Mr. King. I have tried to enroll in SLWC program that was endorsed by the City of Ottawa. Their website was not working, and then I tried to call. The person on the phone was totally non-functional, and I was on the phone with him for 40 minutes. I understand City of Ottawa is not responsible for this company, but if you put this company's name on your website and recommend to your residents, at least it should be a functional company that can serve its purposes. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Councillor King. And in terms of your direction, I think that's a good one. I would just recommend writing it up with clerk's office so we get it in the record. But I think that makes sense. And I know that there's already some direction on receiving the communications that should be coming to us, but I think your direction reinforces that portion as well. So thank you for that. Councillor Brockington.
Thanks, Chair. So staff, can you comment on concerns you've heard this morning from members of council with respect to what we've heard from our residents, the confusion factor, the calls into question about the legitimacy of the partnership, the unprofessional printed communications that people have received? I'd like to get your take on what you've heard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think in general, a lot of the complaints that we've been seeing are similar in nature to what has been experienced in other municipalities where, the document can be a bit lengthy and there is some confusion. I think as well, the fact that it is becoming more aware to residents that they do have some sense of responsibility of the services that, run through their properties. But I wholeheartedly agree that I do think there's always room for improvement. As you know, when we did the relaunch earlier this spring, we did incorporate some of those improvements, including the technical briefing and having a window for councillors to provide comments on the materials going out. I do think that more can be done and more should be done if we want to continue this program. But I see myself and my staff being dedicated to be able to make something that can be successful and, both with the residents and with the councillors around the table to offer these services to the residents that do want to take advantage of them. Thank you.
I appreciate that, because if we don't make modifications, this will sour any future opportunity for other partnerships with other companies should they come to council's attention, because we will not want to go down that path again. And it doesn't matter how legitimate future partnerships will be, folks just won't want to put that risk in for that type of partnership. So I want to go back to the motion that's before us and simply ask, can the agreement between the two parties be amended to cease all communication from this company to our residents? Particularly the mail, excuse me.
I know we've.
Oh, thank you, Chair. My apologies. That is something that we're happy to take away and negotiate. to see what the other avenues could look like. But that is something that we could take away and investigate further. Thank you.
Okay, so that hasn't been pursued yet, I assume?
We have been looking at streamlining, sorry, Mr. Chair, we have been looking at streamlining what those communications look like. I think we did have some successes coming out of the relaunch we had in the spring, but I do know that more can be done. I think that's, if given the opportunity with the motion presented before us, where we can go back, and take a few months and restructure the agreement and find an area that everyone can be satisfied with, both in terms of staff, counselors, and the residents themselves. I'm confident that we can find something that could work.
Does the agreement allow the city of Ottawa to terminate the partnership immediately? And if so, what are the cancellation terms? Are there any penalties in particular?
Mr. Chair, the agreement allows the city to terminate for convenience on 30 calendar days notice without any penalties.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I asked that same question, and I understand from our legal staff that there is no risk to the city in pursuing that. Should we take that direction? Next up on the list is Vice Chair Carr.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just a quick question for staff. The first delegate mentioned that the City of Ottawa receives a certain portion of funds as for every enrollment that is made under this program, but yet that's not published anywhere. I'm wondering if you could speak to that as a first question, and then I have a second one as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. We did do a look. The 5% remittance to the city is not on the FAQ, but we can look to have that added. It is something we discussed in the technical briefing in the springtime. So it's nothing that we're trying to hide. Historically, what we've seen over the last number of years is in the neighborhood, the city's received between $15,000 and $19,000. So far in 2023, we've received around 23,000. I would anticipate it to maybe hit around 30,000 this year, but that's it. And what those costs are used for is to offset staff time and resources for items such as this, working with service line warranties and addressing any kind of residential complaints or questions. And it wasn't important in 2016. Sorry, thank you.
Sorry, I interrupted, so I missed your last line.
Sorry, Chair. I just wanted to further comment that the 5% remittance was in the 2016 report that did come to committee and council.
Okay, thank you. And then since the inception of this program, I guess 2017 or 2016, does the service line warranties service, does it cover situations which the City of Ottawa Claims Department may have been paying out before? Like, for example, if a tree was to grow into my line, would that be covered? Might that be covered by service line warranties? Whereas previously, if it was a city tree, it might have been covered by the city. Are there situations where the transfer of responsibility has moved from the city paying claims to this being dealt with SLWC?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I might ask for some assistance from my legal colleagues, just because when we're looking at ownership of the tree, ownership and the exact location of the break, then that can ultimately change things. Maybe I'll pass that to Naz if I can. Thank you.
We'll have to take a look at that, Mr. Chair. Historically, the city would cover damage resulting from city trees. However, with this repair program, it's uncertain whether service line warranties would do the repair and then ask the city for some compensation. We can circle back with you on that point.
Yeah, okay, that would be great. I would be interested to see if there's been any change to how some of these things are processed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair. And I've got Councillor Tierney up next.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Do we keep tabs or work with SWLC to see how many claims and the dollar values and the successes that have taken place with their product?
Mr. Chair, we receive updates. So we know right now that, there's around 10,800 policies within the City of Ottawa, a little over 5,100 policy holders between property and property owners and residents. We also know that there's been about 499 repairs made since 2020 in the City of Ottawa with a total value of about $580,000. Thank you.
Okay, and I think that's some of the information. And as I mentioned before, the mailings are very irritating. I think it's what creates the confusion, but I do see value in the program. That being said, it's the mailings that create the confusion. And I think you know, looking at some of the successes, my father-in-law used his sewer liner program on Thanksgiving. They were there in an hour, and they got the pipes opened up, which were a problem. So again, it's one of those things. You know, it's a surprise to people. If we can do a major education campaign, personal residential insurance versus what is covered in SWLC, and forego the mailings and just have something on our website where they could find it. You know, at least there's some kind of options for people, because correct me if I'm wrong, and I was trying to ask this question before, a lateral collapse outside your home, it's not $10,000. We wish it was. You're looking in the ranges of, you know, $18,000 to maybe $28,000. Would that not be fair?
Mr. Chair, it's difficult to comment, just given with the differences in properties we have around the city of Ottawa and the nature of the collapses. Some could very well be a cheaper, easier fix, while some are going to be more extensive. I can find some information and report back if you would like, with just some common costs and causes that we're seeing across the environment. Thank you.
That's great. And again, people, you know, we always want to make it that people have a choice. And if we're doing anything good here, that we're educating people. A lot of people didn't even know that they had to pay up to the property line anyway. So we've done that part through good news or bad. And now I think I want to continue that to make sure, call your insurance company, everybody, and make sure you have the appropriate amount of insurance if you don't wish to use a program. And again, I do support the termination of the physical letters at this point. I think that's creates a lot of confusion, unfortunately, every time they come out. But thank you again for your hard work on this.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Tierney, for those comments. And certainly the residential protective plumbing program will continue. It's an important program. Obviously, SLWC is a corollary to that. Whether we partner with, say, one private insurer or we have a different take with the type of communication that we've seen, I think that's the big question. And I can Councillor Tierney succinctly mention that. So I think the motion's in front of us now, and of course we have Councillor King's direction that's come in. I'll just make one brief comment before this, I think the risks that we're seeing to residents in our city right now is as a result of climate change. And that is not going to change. We're going to continue to have issues with that, and we need to be resilient as a city. The issues that we're seeing now are flooding from significant rainfall events. We're seeing tornadoes and windstorms. We're seeing extreme heat. This is the type of communication that we need to be sending to our residents about those issues that we're currently not doing that. I know there's a lot of plans to do that in the future, but that's the type of thing that we're not sending out about how individuals can prepare themselves and the city's programs to help assist with those things. I know SLWC doesn't cover, for example, when there's significant rainfall events and you get that backflow sewer valve, that they're not covering that flooding abasements, which we saw all over the city just a few months ago, which I know Councillor Carr's motion speaks to. So we need to really switch as a city towards resiliency, preparing residents for what is real, which climate change is coming, and we're going to have to be prepared more and more for these events, whether it be Direcco, windstorms, those sorts of things, with backup generators, rain barrels. We need to assist residents with preparing for those sorts of things. I think this program, we're not necessarily, or the partnership with this insurer is not getting us there. We need other pieces here. So look, I support this motion, and thanks for Councillor Lula for putting it forward. I'm going to ask if there's any other comments very quickly. Okay, I'm seeing none. Can we, Councillor Hill? I think I saw the delegate hand up as well. I think we're almost at the vote here now. So I think we'll probably take the vote, just given the timing. Unfortunately, the technology didn't work out. But can we carry this motion? Okay, thanks so much. Any dissents online? Okay. Okay, thanks very much for that. Thank you to staff for answering those questions and for councillors for good questions and directions from that. We're now moving on to the item, which is the residents' petition for the installation of sanitary sewer infrastructure as a local improvement in Taunton Place. We do not have a presentation on this item. I think staff are going to be available to us as we need for questions. If I'm going to ask delegations to come up as well. We may want to go back to staff, obviously, after we hear from those delegations. So I'll just turn 1 second. Okay, I guess the delegations at this moment aren't online. In that case, I will maybe ask staff to just give a brief overview of this. I think it's been a decade since we had one of these come to committee. So maybe you could just give us a brief overview, and that might give delegations a chance to come online. So, are you here in person? Excellent. Okay. Well, look, why don't we proceed with a very brief overview anyway, and then we'll ask you to come up in a moment. Thanks for being here in person.
Thank you, Chair, for that. I'm Scott LaBerge, Manager, Linear Asset Management Branch, and I have my colleague here, Megan Wheeler-Cudahy, who's Program Manager of Capital Planning and Strategic Asset Management, who could give us a brief overview.
Thanks, Scott. To you, Chair. So the local improvement program is a provincially legislated process under Ontario Regulation 586/06. And yeah, we haven't had one in a long time, but some members of council may recall that we updated the local improvement policy towards the end of the last term of council. It's a pretty structured process by which property owners can petition the city to benefiting property owners can petition the city, and if 2/3 support is received, then those benefiting property owners the project could move forward at the will of council, and the benefiting property owners would pay towards the cost of that infrastructure. And I'll let my colleague Tim add anything if he wants to. No? Okay.
Okay, I know we will have time for questions. I assume there might be some clarifying questions from councillor, just given we don't deal with this every day. So I think what we'll do is ask the delegates to come up. The first ones that I have are Joyce and Andrew McKenzie. As first delegates, you just come up to the front here and just push the button, and your 5 minutes will begin. And after that, I've got Albert and Christine Pryor.
Good morning, councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this morning. I just wanted to start by thanking the City of Ottawa for helping us residents to understand the local improvement program bylaw and the process. My name is Joyce McKenzie, and I'm the lead petitioner on the record. However, the petition is a coordinated effort amongst my neighbors and I. As noted in the staff report, we engaged the city engineers and the city staff in 2021 in an effort to determine the best way forward to connect sewer on our street. I also just wanted to give you an idea of who number 6 Taunton is in our house to help contextualize the decision that's in front of you. My husband and our 2 children moved to our house at number 6 Taunton on December 2020 at the height of the pandemic, and during that time where Ottawa was experiencing bidding wars for properties. We purchased our home as we fell in love with it and it fit our budget and its proximity to our children's grandparents. We have every intention of living in our house for many decades to come. After some time living in the house and working with the septic contractors, we discovered that our aging septic may not be able to accommodate our wastewater needs as our children grow up and the possibility of our elderly parents potentially moving in with us in the future. I had undertaken the due diligence of speaking to several septic companies regarding the cost and the effort of upgrading our septic system and the cost of the necessary sewer works for our particular case. And this would be comparable to the order of magnitude for undertaking a sewer extension with the city. And as you are aware, the incentive programs and the septic and support for septic systems are usually reserved for rural areas in Ottawa. And since we are located in an urban area, we are exempt. And as such, we elected to move forward with the local improvement project. An upgraded wastewater infrastructure would improve our family's lifestyle and well-being for future years to come. In addition, I've also taken the liberty of discussing our proposed sewer extension project with the rest of our neighbors on Taunton Place to ensure that our neighbors know and understand the nature of the project, the local improvement process, and the potential impact to their day-to-day lives. As a result of this consultation, we've collected some signatures in support of the project, and this document has been provided to the councilors for your consideration. We really appreciate the support from the committee on this project, and we look forward to completing the sewer extension on our street. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your delegation. I'll just ask to see if there's any questions from councillors, and just one from Councillor Brockington.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you for your presentation. Can you tell me what your household share of the costs are, please?
Sorry, Councilor, I'm just looking into my package here to find out my apportionment. It is so it would be for our particular house. It is the mainline works charge limit would be 79,500 with a service lateral charge limit of $16,750, which is the same amount that's charged to all of the residents that are affected, for a total of $96,250. And just to give you an idea of what the costs are from previous projects of this nature, in April 6, 2010, that's 12 years ago at Blair Road and Swans Way, a sanitary sewer extension was conducted, and the cost to each of the property owners, which was 3 property owners, was $25,000 to $31,000 each. So it's gone up considerably more over the years.
Thank you. And if I heard you correctly, you said the 2 other properties are charged exactly the same amount as yourself?
No, the only one that is the same amongst our properties are the service line extension, but we have our own charge that's based on the frontage.
Okay.
And that's calculated based on a standard charge that's determined by the city.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Thanks for your delegation. Oh, sorry, Councillor Tierney actually has a question for you. Councillor Tierney.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for coming out today. And as someone that grew up in a village on a septic tank, it ain't always fun. And not to mention not super environmentally friendly. So that being said, thanks for all your efforts on this, and thanks for coming out and speaking today.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Tierney. Next delegation up is Albert and Christine Pryor.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. My name is Christine Pryor, and my husband behind me is Albert Zondervan. We're the owners of 5 Taunton Place, one of the properties that will be affected if this bylaw is passed and the city approves the plan for the sewer connection. We purchased our house 4 months ago in June 2023 without knowing that a petition had been received and certified by the city and that the project would proceed once a bylaw had been passed to allocate funds. I want to make it clear, we want to make it clear that we do not oppose the extension of the sewer system to our neighbors, nor do we wish to block in any way their ability to switch from a septic tanks to a sewer connection. However, we are attending this meeting to seek additional information. Specifically, we would like a timeline for all communications between the petitioners, the city, and all affected homeowners concerning this project. What we would particularly like to know is on what date the city accepted the petition that they deemed sufficiently signed so that the project would go forward. And once this petition had been certified, were all affected homeowners informed either in writing or orally that the construction project was advancing? Who knew what and when is significant to us because at the time we made an offer to purchase 5 Taunton Place, the sellers and their real estate agent did not disclose that a petition had been submitted to the city with sufficient signatures to trigger the passing of a bylaw to begin construction. What we were told, and this is verified by our realtor, that was that several of the neighbors had older septic systems and would probably prefer to connect to the city sewer system, but that needn't affect us at all because 5 Taunton's septic system was so new and efficient. The sellers did say that there had been a proposal to bring a sewer connection into the street and that the neighbors would probably approach us to sign a petition to ask for the city to connect, for the city to the city connection, but they assured us that this wouldn't affect us in any way. Instead, the sellers provided numerous documents about the septic system itself, how recently it had been installed, how modern and efficient, and how it would be serviceable to us for the next 10 or 15 years. They said that it worked so well, they wouldn't sign any such petition, and we wouldn't need to either for many years. The previous homeowners failed to disclose that a local improvement petition had already been submitted by the surrounding neighbors, that as long as 2/3 of the affected homeowners signed that petition, it is certified by the city clerk and the project can be approved by the city. And most importantly, that local improvement charges would be applied to our property even if we or they never signed the petition. I want to repeat that we don't want to prevent any of our neighbors from connecting to the sewer. We are simply trying to determine how much of this was known by the former owners at the time they presented the house for sale and whether they were hiding a potential local improvement charge of $127,000 for our house. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for that succinct delegation. I'll just look for questions. Councillor Tierney has a question for you.
Great. First of all, I would like to say welcome to the community. But unfortunately, I think your comments of the latter would be quite correct. I'll have comments to staff. The former owner was fully engaged, was well aware. And it sounds like, obviously, I'm assuming you've contacted a lawyer to deal with the realtor non-disclosure of this agreement. Would that be fair to say?
We've discussed it with our property attorney and we've discussed it with our realtor, but
Good.
everything hinges upon the timeline. All that was revealed actually in a large packet of information regarding the sewer, there was one PDF that was labeled city LIP. And then in reviewing it later, we discovered it was an 8-page document that was submitted in March 2022, or issued by the city in March 22 in advance of the petition. And it said, the document says that the next step is, what is the next step? Is to circulate a petition and have it signed. So what we were trying to determine and what our next step in pursuing this matter would be is to determine whether or not they knew that the petition had been submitted and accepted by the city, whether or not they signed it, which triggers the process to go forward for this bylaw, in which case then they would have known that whether or not they signed it, they should have been able to disclose to us that we would be liable, which
yeah, absolutely.
So haven't been able to get that yet.
Okay, and have you approached the city for that information yet, or who have you approached specifically?
Yes, we did approach the city. All we were told was that they had a certified letter from March 2022 had been received by the previous owners, and that that's the proposal, but there's no information regarding whether the petition they'd been informed about a petition. And so we're seeking from the city whether their petition was accepted, triggering the process, and whether the owners were informed that the petition had been accepted.
Yeah, I'm very intimate on this specific one. This has gone on a long time. So I find it a little weird, this entire thing. But while I thank you for your delegations, we're going to go to staff questions, and I'm going to ask for some clarity, and we can actually get more information from staff. But I think your spidey senses are right, that the former homeowner did know about it, and the realtor could find themselves in a sticky situation for not disclosing. So thank you for coming out today.
Thank you.
Thank you for your delegation. Thanks, Councillor Tierney. Okay, so we're going to move now to questions of staff, of which I'm sure there are some. So first up is the local councillor, Councillor Tierney, and then we'll go to Councillor Brockington.
Thank you. I guess you know what my first question is, and anyone that has been on this file for quite a few years, it's gone very long. Do you care to respond to some of the comments from our last delegation in regards to, you know, the petition process? I remember it took place. I remember all that. It seems so long ago, and this resident that's moved in 4 months ago just needs some of this information. Do you care to comment on that?
Mr. Chair, the matter before the committee and then council, of course, is whether or not to proceed with the work. And that is what committee is to decide in light of the fact that a valid petition has been submitted to committee. Yeah. There may be matters that flow from that on the private side, but those in the end are not the city's responsibility. What I can advise committee is that the petition was certified by a deputy city clerk on June the 24th, 2022.
Great. Thank you for that. Most appreciated. And obviously, I won't ask you to speak for municipal realtor lawyers, but in a traditional scenario, and feel free not to answer because this isn't in your bailiwick, would the seller of the home have to disclose this kind of information?
Mr. Chair, I will go so far as to venture is that one would anticipate that a fulsome realtor would disclose that information. As to whether it's a legal obligation to do so, I cannot answer, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Brockington.
Thanks, Chair. How many households are on Tantum Place?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there are 4 properties that are subject to this local improvement. There are additional properties on Taunton Place, but they're already serviced.
Okay. And how did the number 4 come about?
Those are the properties that don't currently have, sorry, through you, Chair. Those are the properties that don't currently have city sewer connections.
So if I understand correctly, Ms. McKenzie was the lead on this file. And I guess work was undertaken to understand this initiative. And the 4 property owners were approached by whom? The city from a preliminary sense?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the way the local improvement, when it's sought by a community member, is a member of the community volunteers as the lead petitioner, and they are the ones that approach their neighbors with the petition. We supply the information, but we don't circulate the information. We provide that, and it's a community-led initiative.
Okay, so 4 households, it needed 2/3 support to be ratified or legitimized, certified by the deputy city clerk. So am I to assume either 3 or 4 households signed in support of this petition?
Through you, Chair, that's correct. There were 3 households that signed the petition.
And which addresses said yes?
I believe through you, Mr. Chair, the addresses were number 6, number 9, and number 10.
And so the only household that did not sign was household number 5?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct.
Okay. And are the costs to each household roughly in the $100,000 range?
Mr. Chair, that's correct, in that range. But it does, as one of the delegates mentioned, the houses are specific to each of the properties based on frontage.
Given the concerns raised by the owners of number 5, does staff believe that a decision here today should be postponed until those matters are addressed?
Mr. Chair, in my respectful opinion, the answer to that would be no.
Okay, and why not?
A valid petition has been certified to the city. We have no, well, the fact that it's been certified is really the end of the story. It's a valid petition. Analysis has been done by staff and support, and therefore the recommendation in front of you is, in the opinion of staff, appropriate to move forward with this work.
If there is a legal challenge by the owners of number 5, could the city of Ottawa be pulled into that legal matter?
The former city clerk always cautioned me to never give an absolute answer. So I will not say absolutely no. Somebody may seek to draw us in, but in my opinion, the city has acted appropriately.
Okay, and I asked that, Mr. Chair, through you to Mr. Mark, that if there was an elevated risk to the city by proceeding now and not waiting until the matters between the current homeowners of 5, the previous owners, and or an assortment of real estate agents is sorted out, then perhaps that we err on the side of caution. That's why I ask it. I acknowledge that the majority would like to see this service. Obviously, this service is important, and I certainly don't want to delay that further, but we're not talking about $20 here, it's $100,000. And I think that's why the committee should be cautious about moving forward today. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Councillor Brockton. I do just want to jump in a couple, and I see your hand up too, Councillor Hill, but just to clarify, is there a way to not have the sewer connection to the address that does not wish to have it? Or is that not possible?
Mr. Chair, the only way to achieve that is by the city making a grant for the relevant costs to 5 Taunton. There is a legal ability for the city to do it. I do not recommend it.
Oh, I see. It's a grant otherwise. Okay, because they split the cost of the shared infrastructure otherwise. And is there a cost to the city in this endeavor?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the construction of the pipe passes properties that are already serviced, so that portion of the cost would fall to the city, as well as the cost for the resurfacing and the water main, which would be happening at the same time to achieve efficiencies.
Okay, thank you for that. I'll go to Councillor Hill. I'm sure you might have follow-up questions on that, but.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I just want to confirm something in support of our delegate here. So this was certified in June of 2022. Am I correct?
Yes, June 24th. Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay, and so from a due process perspective, can you, I guess, walk me through what that means from the resident's perspective? Is there an automatic notification that would go to each of those residents upon certification?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the city notified the involved property owners on July 4th, 2022 by email after the certification of the local improvement.
Okay, so just to read that back, on July the 4th, 2022, all of the respective property owners that were implicated by this certification were made known of this certification.
Through you, Mr. Chair, there was an email sent to the contact information that we were provided.
Okay. And you have a record of what that contact information was?
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
Is that public record?
Mr. Chair, we would not regularly make emails addresses known that to addresses to which it was sent.
Is there a mechanism with which confirmation of address number 5 could be validated to ensure that that email address was a correct email address and that recipient actually received that information?
Mr. Chair, I anticipate that is the case.
Okay, I just want to give a solid understanding so that the delegate can move forward with their civil litigation. So I think that's suitable for at least this purpose. And if there's more questions, I think they can probably send that by email to the city, but thank you very much.
Thanks for those questions, Councillor Hill. Councillor Devine.
Thank you, Chair. Certainly a messy and confusing situation. I just want to understand, is there any question to legal? If we were to delay for the reasons that Councillor Brockington was discussing. Is there any risk liability to us in such a delay?
The risk to the city, which would also be one of a risk to the residents, would seem to me, and my fellow staff may be better able to outline, is increasing costs. That if the work is not done now and is done, and if there's some time that takes for the process, with the fact that construction costs have increased significantly over the years, they may continue to do so. So I think the risk would be a financial risk, Mr. Chair.
And because I understand that there's cost to the homeowners and cost to the city. Would the increase in costs, both the city-borne costs and the resident-borne costs, would both of those increases therefore be borne by the city? Should we delay?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct. The information presented in the petition packets represents a maximum cost to the property owners. So any additional costs beyond that would be borne entirely by the city.
Okay, and just so I understand, if hypothetically we were to deny this recommendation outright, even though there's a petition where 3 out of 4 residents want it and it is therefore warranted, if we were to deny this, would we be at any further risk? So this is more than just if we delay. If we deny it, are we at any further risk?
Mr. Chair, as has already been outlined, there are costs to the city associated with this. And it's therefore my opinion that there is not a legal obligation on the city to approve going forward with the work. So to answer the question the council put me to succinctly, no.
All right, but there'd be a process for appealing. If, again, hypothetically, if we were to deny, there'd be a process for appealing that?
There is not, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Devine. We're at the end of our speaker list. I'm just going to read the report recommendation. It's that the Environment and Climate Change Committee recommend Council approve the draft bylaw in the general form as attached, document 3, to undertake construction of the sanitary sewer system extension within Taunton Place as petitioned local improvement works in accordance with the cost apportionment outlined in this report. Is this item carried?
Carried.
For that?
Carried.
Thank you. We are now moving on. There are no in-camera items. There is a notice of motion and an inquiry. So Councillor Tierney has a notice of motion, I believe. Councillor Tierney.
Great. Thank you very much for indulging me, Mr. Chair. Whereas 21 kilometers of Enbridge pipeline is aging infrastructure and requires maintenance, and whereas the Salmon pipeline is a critical part of Enbridge's gas distribution system and directly and indirectly supplies approximately 165,000 customers in the Ottawa-Gatineau regions, including several of those customers providing critical services like hospital, federal facilities, social and low-income housing, which count on reliable energy sources for their daily operations. Whereas with significant impact or even causing pipeline failures, gas supply may be compromised and shut off. Whereas Enbridge has approached the Ontario Energy Board, however, based on information provided by the City of Ottawa in the first application, it was denied. Whereas councillors Carr, Plant, King, and Tierney in those wards that are affected have grave concerns as Enbridge resubmits their application to the Ontario Energy Board that previous city information may have resulted in a decision. Therefore, it be resolved that the aforementioned city detail be stricken from the record. Therefore, be it resolved that the Ottawa City Council support the Enbridge gas application for the maintenance of the 21 kilometers of pipeline along Salmon Boulevard. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks for that, Councillor Tierney. That'll be considered at the next meeting. Inquiries, Councillor Hill has an inquiry.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Municipalities across the world, including local municipalities like Kemptville and Lanark County, are protecting their local environment by installing pollinators on city infrastructure, including bus shelters. The inquiry is to explore whether a pollinator bus shelter pilot is viable. Could staff please answer the following questions? Has the city explored such a program in the past? If so, what is the status of that exploration? Based on the programs currently implemented in Kemptville and Lanark County, what would staff identify as the benefits generated from such a program? What would staff identify as the risks? And 3, what would be the expected cost to implement a pilot program of this for 1 to 2 bus shelters already scheduled for installation or upgrades in the 24 to 26 timeframe? This links, as you were saying, Mr. Chair, to the issues of resilience in the community and just seeing what we can do. So this isn't, there should be no funds attached to this. This is simply looking at what could be doable.
Thanks for that inquiry, Councillor Hill. Not seeing any other business. I will just say our next meeting will be a joint meeting with the Planning and Housing Committee. That's going to be held on Tuesday, October 31st, Halloween, to discuss the city's infrastructure master plan. The meeting is going to be held in council chambers and it's scheduled to start at 9:30 a.m. We have asked that the meeting end by 3:30 p.m. To allow parents and others to organize Halloween activities. So I know that's been a request of some members. Thank you for that. The next regular meeting of the Environment and Climate Change Committee will be on Tuesday, November 21st, to consider the committee's portion of the 2024 budget. So with that, we are adjourned. Thanks, everyone.